Hey, that's sleepover.
Ooh, let's tell scary stories. Oh my gosh, like women's depression?
Ooh.
Yeah, like a dollhouse. Nora.
You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. I guess being a woman in the 19th century has never been easy. I've always felt like I've been treated more like an object than a person. I've been married to my husband Torvald for 8 years, but he never has time for me. Sometimes I feel like his plaything. Nothing more than a doll in a doll.
Ooh, but it just seems like Nora had a pretty awful life. I mean, I can't imagine being treated like an object.
Women are still facing oppression today.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've read many stories just like Nora's.
Yeah, I think we can come to the conclusion that oftentimes society tries to force women to conform to certain standards and find their worth in shallow relationships, which leads to objectification and oppression.
Do you remember that one scene where Nora has to go to the ball and all of her problems are finally catching up to her? Act 2. And do you remember it's when Nora's stressed because Krogstad knows about her forging the signature of her father's?
Oh, that's right, but she forged the signature, though, so that she could pay for that trip to Italy for her and Torvald so he can recover.
Exactly, and Krogstad's trying to blackmail her for it. And then on top of that, Nora even has to go to her neighbor's party and dance to Tarantella to try and please her husband.
Remember? And when Torvald finds out that Nora's been keeping the secret, he laments about how unhappy she's made him and how she's not even allowed to raise the kids, which is just ridiculous. I mean,
Throughout the play, we see all the compliments that Torvald gives to Nora are all superficial about her appearance, and they're like praise for when she pleases him, and he puts no effort into their relationships.
If only Torvald knew the sacrifice Nora had made to save him. She knew what she was doing when she forged that signature, and the Italy sabbatical saved him. Even though she did something wrong, she had been working for years to pay off the debt.
Italy, here we come.
oh, Henrik Ibsen.
What a looker.
Yeah. Well, he knew that a lot of the people who were going to see this play would be able to relate to the struggles that he wanted Nora to like portray. So he created a really ambiguous setting so that people could like picture the story of a dollhouse as like their own lives.
He also implements tools like repetition and diction, and he uses words with negative connotations like little when Torvald talks to Nora. So he's always kind of talking down to her, and he calls her his little lark and his little squirrel, which is kind of weird, and little person. So that's really kind of demeaning when you think about it.
Yeah, it always shows that she's sort of like lesser than earlier. The story of Nora reminds me a ton of Daisy Buchanan from The Great Gatsby. I mean, she settled for a guy that totally didn't love her. I mean, he was already cheating on her during their honeymoon. That sounds like objectifying women to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, wait, do you remember that one line? What was it? Like, a little fool or something?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
I'm glad she's a girl, and I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world. A beautiful little fool. Oh, Pammy. Oh, Julie! Mommy needs a juice, Pammy!
I really think about it because both Daisy and Nora were both plagued by self-awareness.
But I think their responses to the situations were pretty different. Nora decided to leave it all behind when she slammed the door. But Daisy was too afraid, so she stayed with Tom even though he neglected her, just so she could live in comfort and privilege.
You know, the theme of oppression is still so relevant today. I feel like we've seen it now more than ever, especially with the Me Too
I
movement.
think there are definitely a lot of important lessons that we can carry forward into the future. It's based around a dysfunctional marriage, and it also talks about the unfair standards that are forced upon women by society. And relationships are something that we can all relate to. So it's important to remember that we can't derive our own self-worth from the relationship.
Especially when we go to college, it's important to always remember that and then try and form like positive relationships and then get rid of the negative ones. Or we need to remember like our true selves and not conform to whatever society wants us to conform to.
I mean, it wasn't until Nora decided to take that leap of faith and slam the door and leave that she was really able to find her own self-worth.
See you later.
Mr. Burke, are you trembling yet?